Welcome to episode 60 of the Voices of Boyle. This week's special guest is Eamon Perry, a long-standing member of our community. Eamon takes us on a lovely journey through Boyle's past, sharing vivid memories of local landmarks, the big snow of 1947 and various community events growing up. Eamon offers a rich collection of personal anecdotes that everyone will find interesting. We'll also peek into his 43-year career as a schoolmaster out in Grange and his dreams for Boyle's future. So sit back and enjoy this nostalgic episode with Eamon Perry. Eamon, it's great to have you on the podcast. Thanks very much for coming along.
That's no problem.
You're looking very relaxed after your few weeks in Italy. Yeah. You enjoyed the bit of sun.
I sure did.
We can talk a bit about that later. First of all, Eamon, why don't you tell us a bit about what it was like growing up in Boyle back as a young fella?
Yeah.
You grew up in Tarman, correct?
I grew up in Tarman.
Okay. So
we were in number 30 in Tarman in the beginning, and after about 7 years, I think, we moved up to number 23 because there were only 2 bedrooms in those houses, but a family called Pollard moved out to 23, and they had the bigger of the 2 bedrooms divided in 2, so it gave them 3 bedrooms. So we moved up for that
purpose. Yeah, you got an upgrade.
We did. We got an upgrade. So, but it was a lovely place for kids to grow up because you know yourself the number of kids in Tarman in those days. Now, you wouldn't have nearly as much in it now. But in those days, sure, there were so many families that had 5 and 6 and 7.
And a lot more as well.
And a lot more, yeah.
I think from what I know of, Maura Daly's family was a large family.
It was, yeah.
And
Flaherty's.
Paddy Flaherty.
Paddy Flaherty, yeah.
Back in those days.
And of course, the Suffens. I think they were the top of the shop.
Really?
I think they had 20. Now, if that's wrong, my apologies.
But it was common in those days, for families to be so large.
Yeah.
They
didn't know how to stop it.
And what was life like day to day, kind of run of the mill stuff when you were a young fella? You were out kicking ball.
You were kicking ball, and you were. We used to have bicycle wheels and trundle them along, but there was a bit of football according as we got older. The big fellas, the fellas that we would call the big fellas, they'd be about maybe 11 or 12. But they'd have their own game, and us little guys coming up at 6 and 7, you couldn't get in. You know, they had no problem filling their team. But you got your turn then when you got to be 10 or 11 again.
And where did you play the football? Was it on the street?
We played on the street mostly on the street.
Was that where the famine graveyard is in Plunkett Avenue? Was that a field or anything back then?
No, there were individual. You could see the individual grave plots on it, even though they were grass grown. You wouldn't dream about going in playing in it like. But when you got to be about 10 or 11 or 12 or thereabouts, the GA would pick you up and they'd get you down for maybe getting on a team or something like that. So there was a natural progression that you got there eventually, the same as life.
Yeah, you had to cut your teeth before that, though.
You had,
work your way up.
You had, yeah.
And back in Boyle then, Eamon, were there any popular local hangout spots that people used to congregate to? Or did you have any?
For us kids, in the summertime, the river was like a magnet. It drew us down there. And down where we used to call St. Patrick's Well. And that was a lovely place in the summertime. But then, as you got a little bit older, you wanted to go further, and the main target was to get to Assylin.
Bit further up. Yeah.
And Assylin, the river was deeper, and so
kind of like the football, the older age group would be there.
That's right.
And you would, you'd work your way up eventually.
You would, yeah.
And so, where did you go to school in those days?
Oh, well, we started off in the convent, and after 3 years, then we moved over onto St. Joseph's, and St. Joseph's was where John Joe Carty's garage is now. That's where St. Joseph's School. And you had 3 teachers there. You had Master Mannion was the top man. You had Paddy Kennedy, and you had Frankie Tarpey's father.
Okay, he taught there.
He taught there. He always told me, never come into the town. You know, when I was teaching out in the country, and if I ever met him anywhere, he'd say, never come into the town. Because he started off in Tascan, and I think the parish priest had a vacancy in town and he wanted it filled, and he must have had difficulty because he twisted Tarpey's arm and he got him into the town, and he was sorry.
He didn't like it as much.
Didn't like it, no, I didn't. So I never came into town either.
Were there any local shops? For me, growing up, Christy Wynne's was my favourite place to be in town.
Yeah.
But in your generation, was there a favourite hotspot?
Well, Christie's was still there, and McDonough's was a toy shop there on the corner that was there. And then there was Ambrose Keenan had a shop. He was always the guy who was the first one in town to have ice cream in summertime. There seemed to be a problem with the electricity in Boyle because there weren't not many people had fridges or freezers at that time. And Ambrose Keenan always managed to have the first in him with the ice cream. And that was a great thing for him.
Whereabout was that shop?
It would be the bottom half of Marion's shop here now.
Okay. Right.
You know where they had the office one time for the
down past on the same side as Dimpna Moriarty's.
Just down, yeah.
Because Peter
Phelan was there,
and then you had Keenan.
Then you had Keenan.
Okay, right. Now I know the
locale.
Yes, yeah.
That was a big
hotspot for
hotspot. And then there was always when you were going to the boys' school, there was a lady, Mary Horn. She had a shop there, nearly opposite where Paddy Leonard used to live. And she did slab toffee and sweets, and that's all she sold. And we supported her.
Plenty of business.
We supported her, yeah.
And Eamon, if you could think of any favourite memories or standout memories from your childhood days, is there any that stick out amongst the others?
The big snow we had in 47, was it?
You remember that, yeah?
I do, yeah, I remember that.
Okay, so that would be great to hear.
I remember we were throwing snowballs and sliding on the road for weeks because the frost and all lasted for all that time. And I'll always remember our own hall door. When my father worked in the post office, and when he came home in the morning, that the snow had fallen, and he went round the back and into the back of the house, and then he went out and he opened the front door, and there was nothing there, only snow. Up
that
height, because it had come in on the wind. There was even the impression of the knocker on the door in the snow. It was one of those things that I'll always remember. And there was another memory I had of my father one day coming home and giving us an orange. the first time we had ever seen an orange at that time, and that would have been maybe 1946 or 47, and the war years were on, and there was nobody crossing the Atlantic in any kind of a boat or ship, so there was no oranges coming into the country. So that was
a couple of memories that you stick out. The one about the snow is fascinating, though. Like we can never even think of what snow. Like I haven't seen snow like that, obviously, or even near it. So it's fascinating to think.
Yeah. Sure. The fathers and the adults in the houses, they had to come to McDonough's Corner, and they had to start digging a trench to get coffins up for burial in Athlin. So that was a big thing. And there was no train got into Boyle Station for several weeks.
Which would have been a huge disruption to service.
Told you.
And I always heard the story, I think it was Christy, Wynne, that said it about the postman that got lost out.
Oh, Johnny Gormley.
Yeah.
Johnny Gormley.
That he was lost for, is it 2 or 3 days or something?
It might be longer than that.
And I'm out in the neighbour in the farmer or something found him. And
that's right. He was out somewhere up near where the Four Peas is, up that area. He was in bad need of somewhere to stay, and he got a place up there. And he settled in and he stayed there till he could get home.
And everyone thinking he was probably lost or something.
Yeah. And no phones, no mobile.
No. And no way of easily contacting anyone, obviously, because of the roads and stuff like that.
Yeah, there'd been nothing passing down those roads.
And obviously then, Eamon, remembering the big snow of 47, you would have had great memories of the flaws of 1960 and 66.
I remember them, yeah.
1960
and 66. I think the big one, 60 was, I thought, the best of them. 66 was bigger, I think, with more people around, but
the atmosphere maybe was better.
The atmosphere was different, yeah. Because I remember I got a job from Micheál O'Callaghan to be going round in a car announcing where the competitions were. But I had to tell Micheál I can't drive a car, because I was about 19 at the time and I couldn't drive a car because we didn't have one at home. So he got Liam McDermott, who was working in Rose Garage at the time, to drive me round. And I was on the mic telling them where the competitions were and all that.
During the actual flat?
Yeah, and it was a big difficulty getting through the crowd on the streets. It was, the streets were practically full of people. And
obviously the centre of town, but how far then did them crowds last? Because when I see photos of it, I see maybe from looking from the town clock down over the bridge and all that. Yeah. But did they also extend out Patrick Street and
a
Shop
certain
Street?
Amount up, a certain distance up. It wouldn't have got as far, I would say, as the Guards Barracks, maybe. And I wouldn't think so. But it was great excitement.
I'd say so, yeah.
It was, yeah.
And obviously all the musicians and every place that could be turned into a shop was turned into a shop. It was,
yeah. And sandwiches made.
Yeah.
And everybody was making sandwiches. And an awful lot of them got dumped afterwards.
And were there any then local fairs, events or gatherings apart from that you can remember from the
Well, there was a fair day every month at the time, and that was a great lift for us in school because we had to get the day off. I don't remember much about the actual buying and selling, because it used to start off up on the fair green at the top of the green, and it was only if the guy that didn't sell up there brought his cattle down here and had them on the crescent.
Okay, so if he didn't,
that was a second chance.
Right. And was it the fact that if he sold them up at the top of the green, he might get a better price up there than he would down in the...
Well, you have to take a chance. Take a chance on it. But he'd also be able to make some sort of arrangement about he gets some young lad to bring them up as far as the railway station for him. And there was always a few loads of cattle moved out of Boyle station when there was a big fair day.
And then, were there any important figures in Boyle that you can remember from your childhood? Obviously, back in those days, the priest, the guard, the doctor were important figures, but was there anyone else that kind of stood out?
For us, Paddy Perry was the man that stood out. I think I heard Tony Conboy say that he was the most famous athlete ever to leave Boyle.
That's right. Tony did say that. And so Paddy, for people that are listening, was your uncle.
He was my uncle, yeah. And he was a guard in Dublin.
He was. I've actually put down a couple of notes about Paddy and his record because it's so impressive. I think people should know about it. Yeah. So just to run a few of them here. Paddy won his first All-Ireland junior softball single and double title in 1929. He achieved 8 consecutive All-Ireland senior softball single titles from 1930 to 1937, a record that I think was equalled by a Duxie Walsh, back in the 80s or 90s, I don't know. But among that, he won 13 All-Ireland medals in total. As you said, played was a guard and won a lot of Dublin county championships.
We did, yeah.
And I think this was mentioned before somewhere, but he won 3 All-Ireland finals in the one they won in football, hurling, and handball.
That's right.
Crazy achievement.
And he played I think he played the football first and the hurling then, and he was due to play the handball in the evening, and he was a bit limping, and he looked for a postponement, and of course postponed. The other guy wasn't going to postpone, so Paddy is refused to have said, "We'll play it on and I'll beat him," and he did.
And he did.
He did, yeah.
Crazy achievement to win 3 All-Irelands in the one day.
In 3 different sports.
And he was injured for that.
He was, for the third one.
For the handball.
Yeah.
There was another famous handballer from the area, was it Paddy Reid?
Paddy Reid, yeah.
They were good friends.
And strangely enough, both of them finished up as guards, and both of them were on the gate of the Garda station in the Phoenix Park. That's where the duty was. But there was another famous one in Boyle, was Paddy Kennedy. Paddy Kennedy has some kind of All-Ireland
records as well,
yeah.
For handball.
Yeah.
And they would have all cut their teeth, of course, on John Casey's handball alley.
That's right.
Out Patrick Street.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of history there and that alone.
And when Paddy would come down from Dublin now and again to see his mother or to see my father, he always went into Clark's for a pint because Jim Clark had All-Irelands.
That's right. He was another great athlete.
So there was a great lot of them in Boyle. Boyle was a real handball centre.
It was. And shamefully today we don't have any handball activity.
No.
But back in those days we had plenty, and the likes of Paddy was
and there was another one, Shamie Gochran.
I heard of that name, the Gochran. There was brothers involved. There
brothers in it. They lived in one of those houses just below the ball alley. And I can remember he went off to England, and he always docked into our house when he came home.
So Paddy lived obviously in Boyle. Paddy, your uncle.
His mother lived in St. Joseph's Terrace, and she lived there until she came to end her days with us in Marion Road. She was a handful of a woman now, but only about that height.
Small but fierce.
Yeah, she was.
And then, of course, Paddy then passed away in 83, I believe.
83, yeah.
Yeah.
He did, yeah.
But some record like that, obviously, in a time as well where there were so few sports in Ireland, to dominate one like he did was a serious achievement.
And there was a hardcore of people who used to travel with Paddy when he was going to play some round of some of the competitions, maybe in Dublin or Galway, or wherever he was going. And these guys were always prepared to back their support with their money, and they did very well out of it.
You yourself were into a bit of sports back in your day, I believe, swimming.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about that.
Cecil Tiernan and Roger Malarkey and Brendan Coleman were three guys that were interested in swimming, and they more or less set up a swimming club. And they got down two swimming trainers, down to the wooden bridge, and a few of us got down and we got little tips and bits off them. And from that on, I was interested. And every Sunday, nearly during the summer, there would be what we call a gala. In Castlereagh had a pool, Sligo had a pool, Tuam had a river, Galway had the sea, and there were lots of other places as well where we went to. And you'd swim your race, and gradually I got it a bit better. And I suppose in 1954 I won a scholarship to Summerhill College. And I went to Summerhill College principally because I knew they had a swimming pool. And I was there for 5 years. And my swimming improved a bit while I was there, even though they used to close it up in the real winter. They didn't want to heat it.
All right.
And, you'd put up with it for September or October, but when November came up, you didn't fancy going into it.
And did you win any competitions or medals?
I did. I've 6 Connaught medals. I have 4 of them would be for underage, under 16 or under 14. But I got one big one. I got men's 50 metres freestyle in Ballina.
And then did you continue swimming for long after those days, or was it something?
I didn't, because what actually happened to me was then, while I was in Summerhill, I kept in touch with it for a certain time of the year. But in 1959, I did my leaving cert, and I got a call to training college for teachers in Dublin. And you lived in there, but there was no possibility of going to any place in Dublin to swim. I had no bicycle there, I had no car and that.
And so then you went to Dublin to study teaching.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about those days in Dublin, Eamon.
Well, you see, I spent 5 years beforehand in Summerhill, and that was like a kind of a penal academy. But when we went to Dublin then, you were treated as an adult, and you were treated better, and you got better food, and you had nicer setups, and there was no such thing as 50 sleeping in the one big dormitory, like was the case in Summerhill sometimes. But
did you spend long in Dublin?
2 years.
That was the course was 2 years.
The course was 2 years, and at the end of that, I came home, and Canon Mahan was parish priest that time, and he had a vacancy in St. Joseph's. And the teacher from Grange, Michael Carty, came in to be in St. Joseph's, and I stepped into Grange, and I got employed from the 1st of July that year.
Okay, so Michael Carty came in and was he principal straight, or did he kind of work his way up?
No, he was principal straight.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember he taught me.
Yeah.
And he taught me Michael McCarthy. So, and then you went out as a teacher or a principal out to Grange.
Yeah.
Principal.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I didn't know that I was going to stay there for 43 years.
43 years in Grange.
Yeah.
The one school.
In the one chair.
So you would have seen some amount of changes then over, even in the educational system in general, over 43 years.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Even the building itself was very unsuitable. You would say there were 2 rooms in it, but one room was very small. But then at some stage we got a bit of a job done, and we got a better accommodation. When I was there first, the local people, and they were fabulous people to me. For supporting anything to do with the school, they were fantastic. And they'd arrive in September. You'd arrive, there'd be a fella there with a load of turf. And we'd throw in the turf. We had stoves. And they kept us going right through the year with turf and all that.
And was there many teachers in the school?
2.
Right.
Myself and a lady.
And then when you left after 43 years, was there still 2?
There was, yeah.
All right. And students then, how many students?
Well, we got up into the mid-50s, but we went down one time. We had only 22 and we were in danger of losing a teacher. And a chap called Eugene Craig, he was a guard. When he came out of guard training, they gave him a job of standing on the Dáil, outside the Dáil, you know. And his father had a bit of a farm at home, so he came home. And he had 5 kids. And he brought his 5 kids with him. And that put up our average to 27 all of a sudden. And it never went down any lower than that in my time.
Would it be unusual then, Eamon, for a teacher or a principal to remain in a position that long, even back in those days?
It was unusual.
Was it?
It was, yeah. It was. I was always happy in it.
I was going to say, like, were you happy, or did you ever get bored of the kind of, maybe the repetitiveness of the same?
There was always a certain amount of boredom involved, but there was always something happening.
And the holidays were always good to make up for them. The
holidays were always good, yeah, they were, yeah.
What were maybe some standout moments of your time over the 43 years, that kind of standout moments of your time there?
Well, the biggest one was when the school was actually 100 years in being. And there was a big celebration for that. There was, we had a mass and a big sort of day out in the schoolyard, and we produced a book with the history of the school going back for the 100 years, and including the names and all of that were on the roll book in those early days. I had about a dozen of those books when I thought they were all sold. And gradually, since then, people have come home and called into the school and say, "Master, I was the master." I say, "Master, you wouldn't have one of those books left, would you?" You know. So I have actually 2 now.
All right.
I have 2 left.
And Eamon, did you ever go abroad? Like a lot of people back in those days, you know, 50s, 60s would have emigrated to England or even gone over for a stint.
I went over for lots of stints.
Did you?
I did, yeah. I did, yeah. When my kids were getting expensive, I had to do something about it. So there was no possibility of us going on holidays at that time. But if I got on the plane as soon as I wanted to, I'd have 6 weeks working, and I'd have a week left after that for myself and Tish. And she might come over to England to meet me, or I might come home and we go. Remember, we went down to the Rosa Tree one time,
Where about in England did you go? And that was obviously during the summer.
That was during the summer.
When you could have them.
And I had good contacts who were prepared to fit me up and get me out and keep an eye on me and not let anyone put too much pressure on me. Mm. Because who gets fellas to put pressure on you at that time? If you had soft hands that were coming in from school, and if you had to spend a couple of hours down the ditch digging up stuff, you get blisters on the hands.
And so what was the work like? What were you doing on a day-to-day for those maybe 6 or 7 weeks?
Well, it wasn't all digging, it wasn't all that sort of thing. You could be sort of assistant carpenters, or you might be an awful lot of the time you'd be a gopher or something, getting me a few of those boards and all that sort of thing. And it wasn't all that bad. You get used to it in a few days. I remember one year I was working on this big prison that was built down in south of London. I remember a fella telling me about the wall. He says, that wall there, he says, have a look at it now and rub your hand on it. You won't get any grips on that wall. It's pure shiny. No one will be able to climb that wall. So I don't know if anyone ever did get out of it. But it was, that was one of the interesting places that I worked. I look forward to it every year.
And did you go? You went back many years in a row?
I must have gone back about maybe 8 or 9 years in a row. Things must have improved. Pay must have gone up a bit.
Yeah.
Keep me at home.
And then, were the long hours those days like?
Oh, the wood. You'd be getting up at 5:30 in the morning, and by the time I might in London now, I might have to go through 2 or 3 different tubes to get to the place for the work, because I was staying with Tish's sister, Maureen, and she lived up near the end of the Piccadilly line, and she looked after me great, and her kids used to always call it the master's coming,
And speaking of Tish now, I know she's not here to join us, but you got married in 1968.
We got married in 1968.
And yes, there was a piece in Riga on the exhibition there a few weeks ago, and I just saw a photo of the 2-year reception was in the Royal. Yeah. So where did you two meet?
We met at what we call a bazaar. Do you remember the bazaars? In the hall, and they're selling tickets and raffles and all that sort of thing.
I can't say I do.
Yeah, I suppose if we got married in 1968, sure, there must have been bazaars around in 1966 and 1967.
Yeah.
So where were you in 1966 and 1967?
Well, I wasn't even born yet. So
that answered that question.
So you met at one of these bazaars?
We did, yeah. But I knew her. I knew her for a long time, and I remember when she was doing her leaving cert, and I was downtown, and I just stop her and chat her, and how is it going for you? How'd you get on, and all that sort of thing. So maybe I had something in my eye even that time.
Yeah. And then obviously you got married in 1968.
1968, yeah.
And you had the reception in the Royal.
That's right,
so it's always a big talking point on the podcast, the Royal.
Yeah.
What's your memories of obviously your reception and the Royal in general?
The reception was good. We had, I think there were over 100 people at it. On the morning of the wedding, I had to go down to the hotel and park my going away suit, because in those days you left the reception about 6 o'clock in the evening, because the wedding took place at 11 in the morning, and you'd be in the Royal sitting down to your dinner at 1 o'clock, and then there'd be the dancing and all that, and at 6 o'clock in the evening I had to get off the funny gear off me, and get on than me going away to it. But when I went off to get my suit, my wedding suit, there was no wedding suit to be found. And of course I thought that some of my mates had been roundabout, but then I cornered, no. So I went down to the reception and I said, I want to get onto the guard station, as I want to report that my suit must have been stolen from here. And about 10 minutes after that, there was an assistant manager there. She was Miss Cuttle, was her name. And she just came in. She had been off for the day. And she said, what's up? And I told her about the suit. Sure. I moved that suit out of that room this morning. I thought someone had left it behind them.
So she had it all along?
She had it. So that was one memory I had of the reception. Long time now.
Yeah. And who was the photographer?
John Keenan from Carrick.
Oh, Keeney's in Carrick.
Yeah.
Right. Christy wouldn't have been around to see back then. Christy, really.
I think he was. He had started off, but John Keenan was one of the people in Carrick and Shannon who was involved in the swimming over there. And I used to meet him every Sunday if I went for those swimming galas. And naturally enough, I said, I'll be getting married now shortly. I'll let you know when.
And Eamon, I would remember you as well from my golfing days back in the early to mid-90s.
Yeah.
But you played a lot of golf yourself.
I did, yeah. I did. I played a lot of golf.
Were you captain and president?
I was captain and president, I was.
Yeah.
And Tish was lady captain twice and president once. Jeez, we were beggared with it. But I joined the golf club in 1964. And the golf club at that time was here,
right.
Just here.
I was going to say right
just
around
where we
here.
are now.
Yeah.
If you hit a good drive off the first tee, it needs to be a very good one to get as far as here.
Right.
And then another straight hole down to where Martin Person's house is, down there. And then you went up across the cliffs and round.
Was it a 9-hole course?
It was 9-hole, and so there was 6 par 3s, and there was 3 par 4s. So it was very tightened up.
Yeah.
You could lose a lot of balls.
Yeah. And was there many members back then?
I'd say the membership was probably stronger than it is now.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's not going well now.
I would have thought that they'd have a great crowd up there, because I do see a lot of their social media posts, but I would have thought that I remember when I was up there was a great crowd, you know, there's like young and old.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the scene is like now, so it's interesting.
No, the climate change is coming in. Winters are a lot wetter now, and the course up there is softer and softer. Mm. And there was a lovely week now, last week. There was a few nice days in it, and everyone was saying the course is in great shape.
And did you play further, like Connacht champion? You know, there was them different shields and stuff.
That's right. I played in nearly all of them.
You did.
I did. I played in all of them. I got my handicap down to 8 at one time. Okay,
because when in my day now, Paddy Nangle would have had, I think it was 7 was his handicap, which was the lowest, I think, at the time.
Yeah.
So who would have been now, apart from yourself, who would have been the kind of the ones to beat?
Colin Loftus.
Yes, Colin was a
Colin was good. You have a few young lads up there now. They're off 6 and 7.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There's a son of Tony Convoy's.
Lachlan. He got player of the year this year, I think.
He's a very good player.
He was obviously in my time as well up there. Lachlan was very good.
But for me, I was never that long off the tee. But I was very tidy after that, you know.
That's what counts, you see, I think.
Yeah. But when you go to some of the longer courses then, you know, the distance you have to hit the ball is,
especially them links course.
yeah.
I never really could understand though how the handicap would transition from a course, just say like Boyle.
Yeah.
If you're playing off, just say 10, 12 on Boyle, and you go down then to somewhere like Strandhill or Ross's Point.
Yeah.
Like, it can't translate.
No, there used to be a sort of a bonus when we left here first, because this was very short. We got 2 shots on our handicap if we went to play in Ross's Point. But I think that's gone now. But there's a new handicap system in now, and
Is there?
It's crazy. The women are up to 53 and 54 handicaps. And the men are over 30, 34, 35. You could come back again.
My days are long gone. The inconsistency used to drive me nuts.
Yeah.
But, as you know, it's about consistency.
It is, yeah, and patience.
But it was a great course up there. I always remember it was always kept again.
Oh, it was, yeah.
It was always kept great, and there was a huge crowd of people.
Do you remember, you remember Billy Feely?
I do.
Billy kept it for a few years.
He did.
And Christy Slan.
Can't remember Christy.
Christy was a farmer from up the mountain, and he kept it for years. He was a mighty little man, because the equipment that they had, going back 20, 30 years, wasn't nearly as good as the equipment they have now. For the mowers that they put on now, they'll mow the whole course in a couple of hours. But he used to be most of the week cutting them. Christy should.
Yeah. But it used to be a great atmosphere as well in the bar.
Oh, sure it was.
The function room there. And it was adequate as well. It was just a lovely setup. It was always a great atmosphere. Now, I was a young fella, so I wouldn't have been drinking it those days.
Yeah.
But you could always just imagine the buzz, and especially after a captain's day or a president's day, there was always a great buzz around.
Thursday night was always the men's night during the summer. And it was great.
Or to be the 4-ball rumbles and stuff like that.
The Thursday was singles. You were on your own.
Right.
But everybody got the chance of putting up a prize. So when it was your day, you went into Bulls and bought a T-shirt or something and put it up. But it was a great atmosphere for those.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that they were worth anything much.
It was just the novelty.
Just the novelty of winning it.
Yeah. And you mentioned there that Tish was captain twice, or...
She was, yeah.
I didn't know you could be captain or president multiple times.
Well, you see, when
running out of
people.
Okay.
Yeah.
You try and spread it across if they could.
Yeah. Gloria Hogan was captain 3 times, I think. And Pat Wynne was captain 3 times.
Yeah. I always remember Jerry Lavery, who had a very unique swing.
Yeah,
and a ferociously fast player.
Yeah.
I just always remember.
And very good.
Oh, very good.
Very
consistent. But he was so fast on the tee, and
he was a great character.
He was,
yeah.
And then, Eamon, what kind of changes have you seen in Boyle over the years that stand out? You would have seen a lot, of course.
I've seen a lot. I have the general impression that it was a busier town when I was a young lad than it is now. When you think about it, there were probably more people, but not as many cars. You had Candon's was a big business over Patrick Street. And you had 2 hotels for a time. You had Forest Park and you had the Royal, and you had Pat Brady's was a little hotel.
Lynch's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now, no one.
Mm.
I'm hopeful, though, at the same time.
It's always interesting to hear how someone feels about the younger generation that's grown up in Boyle these days. Like things are very different for them as they were even for me.
Yeah.
But Do you have any advice, or what would you think of the younger generation, Eamon, in terms of what they have to, like, it's a different landscape now completely.
Oh, it is. It's a different landscape, but then they're starting off to with a big advantage that, if you look at the GA park or the soccer club, when they're having their evening games, they're getting great training and I see Peter's little lassie now. I think she's 7 years old, and she's playing football. And I was asking her the other day, how are you getting on? Oh, she says, I can solo. I wouldn't be sad for them.
Yeah.
In a way. I'd be hopeful for them.
And of course, then, what would you think has kept Boyle unique or special despite the changes over the years? Like, a lot of people would think, the people of a town make a town.
Yeah.
I still think that's, regardless of what structurally or visually changes a Boyle,
yeah.
if you have the core, community spirit, it always kind of keeps things solidified.
I think that what happened to me, the saddest thing that I found was when the Catholic club was taken over. Where the
Family Resource Centre is.
Family. We had the men's club in there, the Catholic club.
That's right.
With two lovely snooker tables.
I remember playing on those well.
And when I got in from school, practically every day, I grabbed a bit of dinner from my mother, and off I went down to the Catholic club. He opened at 4:00. And I'd go in and I'd do from 4:00 until 6, and then I'd go home for my tea, and I'd come down again.
Right, so you played a fair bit of the snooker.
I played a fair bit of it, yeah. I did, yeah.
It was a great setup down there, even from what I remember in the early 90s. You'd have Tom, Wynne, all those boys playing.
Yeah.
And there'd be an old card game in the corner as well.
That's right, yeah.
And what was the name of the caretaker? It would have been Mihal something in my day. Mihal he used to always be late and used to drive people mad.
Mihal McDonough.
That's it, Mihal McDonough.
Yeah.
He used to drive people mad.
Yeah. And when I went in there first, when I got out of the short trousers, come home from Summerhill for a while, you'd go in there and you'd be very quiet for a while. Some of these, even Tom Wynne or older guys than Tom, they'd be there, and you'd be very respectful when they were playing a shot. You wouldn't be able to. I remember there was a fella called Paddy Quinlan there, and he was mad to get playing snooker, but there was only 4 fellas in the club, and the 4 of them were playing cards round about the stove. And he was trying to get in, to get playing a shot, and their chair was out here. One of them says, Paddy, will you push that old table out of your way? The snooker table, And he got under it. And he was pushing, and the sweat was coming out on his forehead. Sure, he'd be pushing you. You wouldn't move those things.
No, they weren't light by any means. And I mean, if you could bring back one thing from the past into today's world, whether it's a tradition, a way of life, an event, what would it be?
I'd like to bring back that fishing competition that was dropped last year.
Oh, is that dropped?
They didn't run it last year.
Oh, they didn't get funds or something, was it?
Well, I think it was, they found they weren't getting enough help.
Right.
That was, I was sad to see that happening.
How many years was that on the trot?
Oh, it was here for a long time.
Was it?
It was, yeah. I can remember when I was 10 or 12 or thereabouts. That river was where the All England Club fisheries, they had it all staked off, and all the Englishmen there, two rods each, and having all sorts of maggots and for feeding the fish first. The locals couldn't figure it out. What chance have you if you're going to fire a whole lot of maggots into the fish and expect them to come and take your little worm? But it used to work for them.
And was there two fishing clubs in Boyle?
No.
I thought there was always two fishing clubs or something in Boyle. For some reason.
No, I wouldn't be aware of it. All I know is that my little fishing rod that I bought when I had to give up golf never got out of the shed at all this year.
No. And you do a fair bit of fishing there.
I used to do a bit when I was a lad, but
yeah. One of the last questions: what would you hope Boyle will look like 50 years from now? Which is a lot, to think that far ahead. But what would you like to see either preserved or changed that we have now?
I see the beginnings of a move to open up the river to the main street, or to the houses on the main street. You have there's one with planning permission, and there's another with the full premises ready to go there.
Front to back. Yeah.
Looking out. Have you ever been in Westport?
I have.
Yeah.
They did a great job.
They're lovely. They didn't turn their back on the river. But of course, that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
The river now is it's more part of the town now, since you have that walk from the bridge down as far as the car park.
It's kind of connected it.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be nice to see it developed, as you said.
It would, yeah.
Because even the one side at the Royal that's developed, if something even similar on the other side, maybe make it a cobblestones or something, it might freshen it up a little.
It would, yeah.
But no, that's a good, it would be nice to see that.
It would, yeah.
And then, of course, before we finish, Eamon, I wanted to bring up the famous Jerry McGlynn.
Ah, poor Jerry.
Because everyone still talks about
to do, yeah.
And, how much of a character he was.
He was, yeah.
And he never let a good story get in the way of never let the truth get in the way of a good story, as they say.
No.
Is there any standout memory you have of Jerry?
I remember him when he was dying. We went down, we were called one night and we went down. He was in the hospice and he was very weak, but he said, I tell you, Eamon Perry, he says, it's very hard to die. So he was feeling it, pressure.
When Florence recorded that episode with him, which was in January of 2023, no one knew that he was even sick, but we think, looking back, and if you listen to the episode, you will hear things in it that would lead you to believe that he knew he wasn't well.
Yeah.
Especially one of the last things, I can't remember exactly what it was, but at the end of the episode, he did kind of say something that alluded to, we should all kind of try and be friends and happy.
Yeah.
There was something in it that when we look back, he probably knew he wasn't well, but no one else did, because it wasn't July, I think, of that year he passed away.
It was, yeah.
But he was a great character.
He was.
He had some great old stories as well.
When I was going to England, I used to always stay with Maureen, the eldest girl of the McGlyns. She used to look after me. But there was one occasion when, I don't know what, Maureen was away or there was something wrong anyway, I bumped in with Jerry. And he had the bed. And I had the rug on the corner. And he had a job in a biscuit factory at that time. And he had to be in there early. But he used to call me in the morning. He said, come on, get up. And he'd be there and he'd say, would I ever believe in Boyle that Jerry McGlynn had his bed made at 5:30 in the morning? And we used to go down to a little pub down the road and we'd have 2 pints each And we used to meet Tommy Egan and the wife. They were there that time. And Jerry used to always say, I'm going to give up this drink. And he had his mind made up. And I think when he died, he was 33 years without a drink.
Yeah, he did say something about it. I think it was maybe even close to 40, I think.
Could be, yeah.
Yeah, he said he never touched it.
Never did.
That.
No.
And as he said himself, he drank enough of it in his time. He was some character.
Yeah, he was.
He really was.
He was.
And just to finish up then, Eamon, I'd know Joanne, and obviously, Joanne was in my year in school, and obviously I'd know Peter. I knew Lisa to see.
Yeah.
And I don't, as I was saying to you, I don't think
Sandra.
I knew Sandra at all.
Yeah.
And Sandra's based in Puglia in Italy.
But they have a lovely place there.
Lovely. And then Lisa is based in...
Lisa's right on the water in the south of France.
Lovely.
Nice place too.
Yeah. So that's, I think, covers about everything that I wanted to talk.
See if you can make something decent out of it. There was another thing I didn't mention was when I retired, I got a job with a crowd called Hibernia College. They're a teacher training college. And they would take in the teachers for I think 2 years. Someone who had a different sort of a degree and they wanted to be a teacher. And they take them in there. And when they got them in, they had to put them out for training into schools. And I had to come along then and examine them and see that they were right. And I had that job for a couple of years. And I actually covered 11 counties for them. And then I got prostate cancer. That put a stop to that.
Right.
Yeah, but I'm over that, thank God.
And that's good. Well, Eamon, that's all. I think we've covered a lot. So thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
I hope it works out as something nice.
Thanks
that someone will enjoy it, I hope.
Absolutely. Thanks very much, Eamon.